Hello, this is Rudy Giuliani, and I'm back with Rudy's Common Sense. This episode is going to, I think, shock you, many of you. Those of you who have been watching Fauci carefully, maybe not. If you've read some of the books, the Kennedy book and others, you might be prepared for this. If you haven't, what's the warning they give, when you're going to show something terrible? Just be warned. This is like really, to me, having been a prosecutor, very, very sensitive to conflict of interest, is pretty disgusting stuff. And the hiding going on here is very, very suspicious. So I have with me Dr. Maria Ryan. Dr. Ryan, as you know, is one of the people that probably at the earliest stage outlined for us what was going on. It's actually quite remarkable that even before we were on the air, which was right at the very beginning, she would explain to me exactly what it was and how it was going to happen. And she interviewed Dr. Yan, the first interview of Dr. Yan, and helped her really acclimate herself. And I think she felt good communicating not only with a woman, but with a woman who's a scientist. Dr. Ryan is a nurse practitioner and a PhD in hospital management. She was the president of Cottage Hospital, and she was, I think, 7 times in a row selected as the leading rural hospital CEO in the country. And she also has a deep, deep scientific background. We take too long to describe it all. But I think those of you who watch this podcast, you know her expertise is right at the very top. So let's talk to her about something that has just come about, 2 things really that are fairly new and haven't been examined, but are very, very concerning. Maria, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here today. And I think the term you were looking for is viewer discretion advised.
Viewer discretion advised. I'm going to get like a little, one of those little chyrons, viewer discretion advised. Now,
so big news, big news.
Well, so tell us the first one, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Because there's a little bit, I guess this is a little older. This is the royalty checks that were going to NIA and NIAH employees.
Yes.
Which were disclosed back in 2005, briefly.
Yes.
And then they disappeared. No disclosure for years and years and years, making one think that there weren't any anymore. And then it turns out that these people, which include Fauci quite prominently,
correct,
were getting checks from other than the government.
Right. So back in 2005, I don't know what triggered the Associated Press, but they did an FOIA, which is a Freedom of Information Act request for documents. And they discovered a lot of royalty checks. I don't know what happened back then, whether they were going to do any kind of oversight, meaning the government, but it was quiet, very, very quiet. And then recently, Open Books, last year actually, put in an FOIA for documents related to this. Well, the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health, kept stalling.
They weren't anxious for open books, to have an open book?
No, they weren't anxious, even though they're a government funded, which means your tax dollars, my tax dollars, and your tax dollars. So we have every right for transparency, but they fought it. So my understanding is Open Books hired Judicial Watch.
Who probably are one of the leading organizations and have gotten some of the most damaging documents ever. Documents that helped me a great deal in defending President Trump. And now documents that are extremely revealing as to the irregularities or fraud, if you will, in the 2020 election.
So Judicial Watch sues, wins. They have to be transparent. They estimate about 3,000 documents, but only 1,200 so far have been released, and they're heavily redacted. The time period is 2009 to 2014. And the issue right now is it's so heavily redacted. We can see royalty payments, who they've gone to. Like we know Dr. Fauci, who has a government salary already to do his work, over $450,000 a year, received 23 royalty payments during that time. We know Francis Collins, Dr. Francis Collins, who has since retired. He was the director of the NIH, and he retired in December. His salary was a lot less, under $300,000. So he's already getting paid to do work, but he received 14 royalty checks during that time period. And then Dr. Fauci, under the NIAH, which is the National Institute of Infectious Disease and Allergies, his deputy director received multiple payments. Now, it's estimated that it's been a flow of about $350 million. But with what they've gotten so far, they are tracking about 154 million.
Could you define a little better? You say all of these royalty checks, the estimate is that if you get all of them,
yep,
it would come to about $350 million
in
royalty checks.
In royalty checks.
Of which they think they've got less than half.
Correct. That is correct.
But they don't know because they've redacted the money.
They're so heavily redacted. Not only is the money redacted, what companies gave those royalty checks?
No.
Yeah. So Big Pharma, was it Pfizer? And I have a lot of people, because we have a hit radio show, a lot of people contact us and say, you know what? We know there's a lot of issues with transparency, with censorship, and I've given up because nothing ever happens. I'm telling people, hold on. I think things are going to happen. Things are opening up. So there's a new acting director of the NIH, National Institute of Health. His name is Lawrence Tabak, if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
T-A-B-A-K. Tabak.
Yep. So he was asked to come before the House Appropriations Subcommittee, and it was under this venue that we're hearing this information. And this is Blockbuster, right?
Yeah.
When you think of this, Rudy, $30 billion is the budget that the NIH has in also Dr. Fauci's National Institute of Infectious Diseases and Allergies. They're two separate, but between the two, I believe they can give out $30 billion. That's very influential, right? So who gets that? They see about 56,000 recipients got those grants. So, okay, if they went through a process and they got the grants and there's no funny business, okay, great. They're going to do research. It's going to help the scientific community. It's going to help mankind. I'm all good with that. But the fact that some of these people who got grants, then in return, now this is what's crazy to me. Not only does the Institute receive money, but individual scientists. How can they remain neutral?
I was employed by the federal government for half of my life, half of my working life, something like that, right? In different positions. It was the courts and the Justice Department. Mm-hmm. And even going back to the early days before we got terribly ethical, you couldn't get extra money unless you disclosed it.
Yeah, not individually.
And, what we should have, under normal ethical circumstances, is this should be filed every year. So if for some strange reason Fauci gets royalty checks, in addition to being the highest paid government employee, there should be a form filed every year that shows you who paid it, how much it was, and what it was for.
Right.
Why are we hiding it from the public?
Yeah.
Worse than that, when they were asked to show it, they hid it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, unless I'm too suspicious or paranoid, there's something wrong here. Think your homeowner's insurance covers home title fraud? Think again. And neither does your common identity theft program. The FBI calls home title fraud one of the fastest growing crimes, which is why you need to go to HomeTitleLock.com, America's leader in home title protection. Here's the problem. The deed to your home is the only document that proves you own it. And the deeds to all of our homes now are online. In minutes, a criminal can find and forge your name off the deed to your home and refile as the new owner. Like Jeff, who spent a fortune in legal fees after a thief forged himself onto the deed to Jeff's home and took out loans. Jeff didn't have home title lock then. He does now. Or Deborah, who thought our common identity theft service would protect her. Then a criminal got onto the deed to a home and had her evicted. Deborah has Home Title Lock now. HomeTitleLock.com is your peace of mind, and the deed to your home is protected. Visit HomeTitleLock.com. HomeTitleLock.com.
You know what I always get afraid of? When people do the Freedom of Information Act, which I'm very happy lawyers do it, groups do it to keep the government righteous and transparent. I'm always afraid they're going to destroy documents. And I'm not saying they're going to do it, but I do fear that they'll destroy documents. But this is a blockbuster. In one of my laboratories, we had a program where we would, because certain things were recycled, we would get money back from a company, but it couldn't go to an individual person. It went to the organization.
When did this get disclosed?
Last Wednesday in the House Appropriations Subcommittee.
And so this is the committee is under the direction of Democrats. So it's still disclosed.
Yeah.
Which is a little surprising.
Yeah.
And if the government changes, in a few months, Republicans will be in charge of that committee. It might be very different in terms of how much gets disclosed and how quickly. I mean, the minute you told me 2009 to 2014, I'm saying to myself, I want to see 2014 to pandemic.
Right. And one can think it's going to be a lot bigger royalty checks during the pandemic.
And how do they know it's about 350 million for that period?
I tried to do research on that because quite a few articles contained that $350 million number. And I don't have clarity on that.
Because that's 6 years. 250 million in just 6 years.
Yeah.
That's real money.
Yeah. Yeah. And does it influence those scientists? Does it influence the decision makers saying where that $30 billion grant money goes to? Are we really following the science?
Are you asking me that?
Yeah, I'm asking the universe. That's a rhetorical question.
Where did the $31 million that went to the Biden family, did that influence them? But there's something else of equal concern, isn't there? That's come out, but even this should have been front page, New York Times,
every
Washington
newspaper.
Post.
Yep.
Fauci, who now has become a controversial figure, particularly the best-selling book by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., several others. It should have been on the front page of the New York Times. I mean, hidden, for the Republican, hidden payments to Fauci amounting to millions.
The American Hospital Association, which I used to belong because I was a hospital CEO, just bestowed an award on
the best one in the country for quite some time.
Just bestowed an award to Dr. Anthony Fauci. Now there's so much information out about him. This is breaking news, so they probably didn't know about this prior. But I do hope that they look in the mirror and rescind that award, because we can't glorify people who do things for money or people who block the American public from seeing what's happening within their department that we pay for.
The second one you're going to talk to us about is, to me, is even more disturbing, because from the day that Fauci said that he didn't buy into the idea that the Chinese sent this all around the world, because after all, it would kill Chinese people, and the Chinese scientists would never do that. I knew he was a liar.
Yes.
Or the stupidest man in the world, or most uneducated. China has eliminated 60 million of its own people.
Yeah.
Bare minimum. Okay, you might say that was a while ago. Yeah, like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Or how about right now? They're trying to exterminate the Uyghurs, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to exterminate the Falun Gong. They do a pretty good job of killing Christians, right? They want to control the Catholic Church. They want to appoint bishops to the church.
Up until recently, they killed girl babies after they were born.
You think they'll still do that? If you walked into the office of any of the Communist Party leaders and you told them, "Oh, a terrible thing happened. We had a terrible earthquake. We lost 200 million people," they'd say, "Oh, that's good."
Yeah, right.
I mean, for this guy to say that they give a damn about human life shows hopelessly naive or crooked.
You know, Rudy, I've been on several podcasts with you at the start of the pandemic till today, and we often talked about Dr. Fauci's role. We know through EcoHealth and Dr. Fauci's department, we, the government, our tax dollars, supported gain of function. And we knew we did it in Wuhan, China. And I always had an ethical issue that Dr. Fauci didn't stand up and say, wait a minute, we got to shut down everything right away because this is a man-made, genetically formed virus and we got to save mankind. So I've always wanted to talk to him to ask him more about that. But yes, let's talk
about this. The way you explain it's going to be easy, but a lot of people will find this is about genome sequencing.
Right. Now, I have not read the transcripts from the House Appropriations Subcommittee, and I only have information from what's reported, so it's limited. So Dr. Tabak said that we, in the NIH, suppressed, hid information from American scientists. Let me explain this a little bit. So I knew that the Chinese were fooling around with gain of function. We were doing it in the United States too, out of the University of North Carolina with Dr. Barrick. But President Obama's administration put a moratorium on it because too many lab leaks. Thank God nothing happened like in Wuhan, but there was a lot of accidents. So we put a moratorium on in this country. So Dr. Barrick went over and worked over at the Wuhan Lab of Virology. So they were very, very proud. I would read it in scientific magazines, how proud they were. The one that's called the Bat Lady, Dr. Shi Yang Li, she would publish in Nature magazine beginning in 2013 and maybe prior. So they would put up those genome sequences for their scientific community. They were very proud of it. So in September of 2019, when the communist Chinese military came into the lab and started taking control, those genome sequences disappeared in the Chinese community. Nobody could access it anymore.
In other words, they had been on like websites for the benefit
like
of
a particular,
certain websites.
Yes.
Available to Americans as well?
That I don't know.
Available to the Chinese?
I assume, for sure to the Chinese, maybe American. So move forward, we know of the genome sequence from the Chinese scientists. So we put it on our scientific community website because people should know, right? You have a patient, you have patients dying. You want to know, you want to figure out how to treat. And a lot of times those genome sequences can tell you that in their predictors of certain things.
Is this the genome sequencing for the COVID-19?
Correct.
For the specific COVID-19?
Correct.
Originally called the novo
coronavirus, meaning new coronavirus.
Novel coronavirus.
Yep.
And I like to call it CCP virus.
Yeah.
But, so originally, this was out there until September 2019.
In China.
Yeah, they weren't hiding it.
Yep.
All of a sudden, it gets taken away, which kind of is an indication that things go back. You've always said.
I've always said. I believed it started circulating in August of 2019.
Further than anybody would realize,
Yeah.
Right? So then, when we published the genome sequencing,
yeah. So it could be available, rightfully
we
so.
may have known it from way back then.
I don't
Since
know.
we funded it,
And
why wouldn't we know?
that's the thing, that whether it's the House Appropriation Committee or another committee needs to dig deeper. This isn't fair to us that we know only this much of the surface. But it does get published here for the scientific community. And this is what Dr. Tabak said. Per the request of the Chinese scientists. But remember, now it's not a regular Joe Chinese scientist. It's the scientists that belong to the Communist Party. The CCP. They request to Dr. Collins and Dr. Fauci to remove it, and we complied.
No.
Now, this is
so the Chinese communists?
Well, it's so serious because what about mankind? What about human lives? So it does need further investigation, but it's breaking news on your show.
Not long ago, Mike Lindell, the inventor of MyPillow, and his team fit me for my very own MyPillow. They also introduced me to their wide assortment of other incredible products, like their mattress topper, their sheets, towels, slippers, and more. Sleep is incredibly important to me, and I can assume for all of you. It's time you give MyPillow a try and see for yourself. Listeners have helped build MyPillow into the incredible company it is today, and Mike Lindell wants to give back to all of you. You can get great discounts on MyPillow products by going to mypillow.com right now and seeing each of the specially priced items, including those in the radio listener special square. You're going to see rotational offers up to 66% off on products like their pillows, mattress topper, Giza sheets, but also new products like their slippers, weighted blankets, robes, and waffle blankets. All MyPillow products come with a 60-day money-back guarantee. Enter promo code Rudy for these great specials. That's mypillow.com and use the promo code Rudy. Well, could you give us the date? So if we do the date sequence, I don't want to get too many sequences.
Yeah,
we do the date sequence in September of 2019. They have it published, and they have the genome sequencing published without any fear. But people can access it. We don't know how long it was up, right? But we know it was up on that date.
Yeah.
All of a sudden they take it down.
You have to remember the Chinese bragged. They
Up until then.
they got so many praise for manipulating the bat coronavirus.
But then they changed it too.
Then they changed their tune
So
when there was a leak or deliberate. I don't know.
Up until that date, you can get it. All of a sudden it disappears from the Chinese.
Correct.
And then all of a sudden, in March, I think it was, you told me, March of 2020, it reappears on our website.
Yep.
Which one? Do you know?
I don't know. It's a data set. It's a website from the NIH and where those things are published, and it disappeared. So it is a little bit confusing, and the testimony is a little bit speaking out of both sides of Dr. Tabak's mouth.
Dr. Tabak said that we had it published. It was up in March of 2020. And then all of a sudden it was taken down. Why was it taken down?
Dr. Tabak testified that it was a request from a Chinese scientist and that Dr. Collins and Dr. Fauci complied with the request. Now, this is where it's a little confusing because the congressperson kept pushing him. So that means we don't have that original genome sequences. Because remember, now the virus has changed a lot.
Right.
And we have the current ones. We want that original one.
Of course.
And she pressed him. Well, we have it, but we can't get it. The system it could be on is very archaic, and it would take a scientist to write to NIH to formally request it. So the congressman again says, someone could get it. Well, because of the way it was taken down and it wasn't done, it should have been suppressed instead of hidden. I don't know if they could get it. So it's very, very confusing. And again, we either need the transcript from that committee to be released or we need further investigating.
Do we know if they're so happy about issuing subpoenas that violate the attorney-client privilege of the Constitution of the United States? Did they issue a subpoena for the original document?
That I don't know. I really only do know surface information at this time, but I wanted to bring it to your audience because we need to ask a lot of questions.
The reality is that this is another indication of how Fauci and people around Fauci were serving the Chinese Communist government.
Correct.
Almost as if they were employees. Remember, it was Fauci who objected to Trump cutting off Chinese coming into this country, which eventually he had to admit might have saved 500,000 to 1 million lives.
Right. And remember,
he was called what was he called? A xenophobe, a racist, a bum, a creep.
So unfortunate. Yeah.
By the present occupant of the White House, who would have, if he were there, had another 500,000 to 1 million Americans killed because he's completely compromised by China. We don't know about Fauci, but we do know that Biden is. Yeah. Well, I mean, this is an extraordinary disclosure. It's also extraordinary that it is so modestly covered. This is information that is.
This is blockbuster information. This is about human lives. This is about a government agency which is supposed to be transparent to the American people. It's not about lining your pockets. He already makes, Dr. Fauci, a very good living in these royalty checks that went to him, in hiding the genome sequences. Right now, he should be fired or put on leave until further investigation.
He isn't investigated like these professors who cooperate with China. They've been prosecuted and put in prison. I mean, to take down the genome sequencing in and of itself would be something that could be criminal, or it could be unethical, or certainly would be a matter of concern. But to do it on behalf of a country that wants to basically destroy the United States, they want to take over world leadership for the United States, acknowledged by 2048 or 49, that is acting in a very, very hostile way toward Taiwan, like they want to start a war with the United States, has done nothing to stop Russia from trying to exterminate the people in Ukraine. This is an enemy of the United States. This is extraordinary. Well, Doctor, as usual, you're ahead of the class, and I particularly want to thank you for this, because this is information that is going to help our country protect ourselves, because unfortunately we're not being protected, and people like you and people who will listen, we're going to have to protect ourselves by getting out this information.
Correct.
And staying on top of it. And I know within a week or two you'll have this whole thing.
I'm hoping.
And you'll get. There's nobody better on this subject than Dr. Maria. Nobody better, without doubt. From the beginning, the chart would be unbelievable. Well, thank you very, very much. Excellent
You're welcome.
Work for the United States. So there we are. How much more do we need to know about Fauci and his whole operation? What's going on there within the deep state? I mean, people ask me, is there really a deep state? And I say, are you kidding me? They're getting checks. Government employees getting checks that aren't disclosed every year, like I thought we all had to do. And then when they ask for disclosure, they fight. They try to hold it back. When they finally do disclosure, they don't tell you how much or who gave you the money. How do you figure out if there's a conflict if you don't know how much and who gave it to you? Doesn't that have to, unless these people just like to screw around, has to indicate what we call in the law guilty knowledge. That's the kind of thing that puts you in jail. The second one I won't comment on, I'll get you angry. A phone call from a Chinese scientist telling you to take down a genome sequencing and you comply with it? From a Chinese scientist? Any scientist in China is a Chinese communist scientist. You know, when the doctor said the military went into the lab, the military controls all the labs. They do military work in every one of their labs. That lab did military work. That's why there's an issue. Were they trying to create a biochemical weapon of some kind? I don't know the evidence of that, but this was a military lab. They all are controlled by the army of the Communist Party. So once again, the good doctor comes to the rescue and raises an issue that we're just going to stay on. And I think people like-minded, like you and me, are going to stay on this, because it's becoming very, very clear now that this whole pandemic is a scandal of the highest order. Well, take a couple of days to absorb that. And we'll be back for the podcast in a day or two. And again, my deep appreciation to Dr. Maria Ryan. She's just exceptional. And this has to be explored. We're not going to let it go. Thank you. And God bless America.